Hello, welcome to my channel. I am going to be talking about a story that I found randomly one day on Facebook, and it kind of blew my mind. Like, I'm one of those people that thinks there has to be something out there besides just Earth. Like, we can't be it. And this story kind of like sent me into a wormhole of just like thinking about life, and I was gonna try and give you the Cliff Notes version of this story, but I don't think that would be fair considering how nicely detailed this story is. So I decided just to read the whole thing to you guys. The website that you can find this story on is called the Beatles.com. Alright, so I'm just gonna get right into the story. On September 29th, 2009, I experienced something that I'm still having trouble believing happened to me. I came into the possession of a cassette tape containing a Beatles album that was never released. In fact, not only was it never released, but it was recorded many years after they broke up. Now this is where the story becomes slightly more unbelievable, and it is almost embarrassing to attempt to explain the incident to you for fear of viewing me as completely absurd. I must assure you, I am not insane or on drugs, and hopefully the audio from this tape will be enough to prove that there is more than we think out there. I live in Livermore, California, but on September 9th, I was driving home from Turlock after visiting a friend for a few days. I had my dog with me, and I didn't have any plans for the day, so I decided to take a drive through a place called Del Puerto Canyon, just west of Turlock. This is a scenic road that is a fun drive and actually goes through to Livermore. I hadn't taken a cruise through it for a while, so I thought I would take this way home. It was about 2 p.m. A ways into the canyon, my dog started acting like she needed to use the bathroom, so I pulled over to the first available parking area to the side of the road, and I let her out while I stretched. At first I didn't notice, but then I heard the barking from 30 yards away. My dog was chasing a rabbit. Now, my dog is a pretty good dog, but if she's chasing something, then there's no stopping her. So the only thing I can do is become part of the chase. They already had about a 40-yard head start, so I really had to book it. The uneven ground and soft dirt patches made it difficult to run, and it wasn't very far into the chase I had stepped into a rabbit hole, fell, and knocked myself unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a room with some furniture and electronics in it. I was taken care of with a bandage on my head, but I still felt uneasy about the situation because where I fell and hit my head was a very rural, unpopulated area with no houses, and outside of the window of the room I was in, I could hear traffic. I wasn't near the window in the room. It was actually on the other side, next to an unusual-looking electronic machine that I didn't recognize from anywhere I've seen before. The only reason this stood out was because it seemed out of place in a person's home, which most of the room resembled. I decided to get up and look out the window, but the door opened and in ran my dog, who was pretty excited to see me. When I looked up, there was a man standing at the door. He was about 6 feet tall, had medium, long black hair, and was dressed casually, but gave me a greasy vibe, if you know what I mean. He introduced himself as Jonas and asked me if I was okay, to which I said yes. He said he found me unconscious in a field with my dog barking at me, so I thanked him for helping me and my dog out, and I was surprised my dog even came back to me. I then asked him the question that would make me start wondering if I in fact had gone crazy. I asked him, "Where am I?" "About 20 feet away from where I found you," he replied. I told him that couldn't be possible because there was no houses within at least 20 miles from where I last remember being. He then told me what he was going to say would be very shocking and unbelievable, and that if he didn't actually experience it himself, he wouldn't believe it. He took a look at the machine near the window and looked back at me and said he transported me to parallel Earth. He said he traveled to our Earth dimension and found me knocked out in the blazing heat with no one around to help me out. Normally, he said he doesn't take outsiders through a portal, but in my case, he thought I needed urgent help. I immediately started asking questions about traveling to parallel worlds, since all I knew about the topic was YouTube videos of Michio Kaku. He told me to slow down and that he would explain himself. Apparently in his world, a parallel travel machine can be purchased quite easily, While not cheap, it's pretty popular, even though the machine can be dangerous enough to cause death. In the 1950s of his dimension, the government was faced with a decision to continue to fund a space program, I'm guessing NASA, or a parallel program called ARPD. I cannot remember what he said it stood for. I'm pretty sure the PD is parallel dimensions, and I remember the acronym because I noticed it on a lot of the electronics in the room I was in. He then explained that the real danger of using one of the machines was exploring new dimensions. Since there are an infinite amount of Earths in other dimensions, only a small amount have been explored. The problem with exploring unknown dimensions is the chance you will die somehow once you walk through the portal doorway. He told me that people die from falling, if the ground isn't close enough to where the portal opens. They die from drowning. There are worlds covered in water. Hard to reopen a portal underwater, he said. He said, in order for people to avoid this, they would have to know that there would be similar ground in the dimension they were traveling to. So his government began research worlds that were safe to transport to, even creating public spots where people could choose a menu of worlds to go to that were all safe. Many of these worlds were lush vegetation worlds that were never ruined by man, only to be invaded by the large, overcrowded population of travelers of his world. He said something about new industries that opened up because of this. One of them being something like dimensional life brokers. These people offered the chance to live as someone new in an already established similar world that doesn't know of dimensional travel, nor that there are people crossing the dimensional border too. Jonas said he was an explorer for one of the dimensional travel agencies, and he was looking in new uncharted dimensions and came up on my Earth. We talked about a lot of things. It was interesting to see the similarities and differences we had between worlds. Food, culture, TV, technology, we covered a lot. We also started talking about music, which was an interesting topic because there were many of the same bands between our worlds that existed, including the Beatles. When their name got brought up, Jonas mentioned that his brother just got back from seeing them perform at a concert recently, which I gave a weird look to and said, "You mean they're still together?" And he said, "Yeah." I told him how they broke up in our world and that John and George passed away. Apparently in his world, they're all alive, healthy, and still on tour. Jonas then had me follow him into another room that had a bookshelf-looking thing with some cassette tapes. Yes, the music ones. Apparently CDs never caught on in this world. And a tape, record player, audio player, though it didn't quite look like the type of radios we have. The speakers looked more like crinkled cardboard but sounded pretty good. I didn't get too good of a look at the speakers, but they certainly weren't round. They almost had a tall accordion look. The only Beatles album he had that was store-bought and had real cover art was Sgt. Pepper's, which the cover looked slightly different than the one we have, but the songs were all the same. The other 6 Beatles tapes he had were all like somebody recorded them onto a blank cassette for him and wrote song titles on a card slipped in the case. A couple of the album titles written on the tapes I recognized, but there were about 4 that I had never heard of before. He played a few songs from them, which was totally surreal to hear Beatles music that was never made, at least in our world. We talked about it for a little bit. He said a girl made the tapes for him when he was in upper school, which they call high school. She was a huge fan of them and wanted him to listen. He popped out the first tape and was putting in the second one when I told him he should record me a copy of one so I can take it back with me, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Well, the look Jonas gave me when I said this is part of the reason I'm remaining anonymous. Not only did it sort of scare me, but it had a very serious, almost creepy look to it, followed by the phrase, not word for word, I can't remember exactly what he said. "No, you are not to take anything back with you to your world. No pictures, no souvenirs, no tapes, nothing." I asked him why, and he wouldn't really say, except for that, my safety, I wasn't taking anything back. Of course, I'm not the type of person to go through all this parallel world stuff and not grab something to prove the outrageous story of my experience. So, for the moment, I told him I wouldn't take anything back and changed the subject. About an hour later, after some more talking, I heard a doorbell ring and he left the room to check the door. I know that I may not have another chance to take something, so I grabbed one of the tapes and put it in my pocket and then shuffled the tapes around to make it look less obvious that something was missing. When he came back inside, I said I was kind of hungry to just get us out of the room. I mixed the tapes up a little so it was hard to tell one was missing, but I didn't want to be there when he found out. So he took me to the other room and fed me. For the most part, the food tasted like ours, but was different product names and different colors. The purple ketchup was the strangest. We talked a little bit more, and then I expressed the notion that I should be going because it was getting late. The time of day was identical to ours, as is all worlds. We went back into the room with the machines in it. I grabbed my dog and shook Jonas's hand for taking care of me after I was knocked out. I thanked him again and stepped through the portal, which felt like getting wet but staying dry the entire time. Really weird. When I put my dog on the ground, she even shook herself like she thought she was wet. Back in our world, I could see my car on the road still, and there was a straight line burn mark on the ground from where the portal had shown up. It was dark outside, and the only reason I noticed the burn was because it was still smoking from the heat. I walked back to my car, didn't run this time, and drove home. The worst part was I couldn't even listen to the tape on the way home because I didn't have a tape player in my car. I actually wasn't even able to listen to it at home either for the same reason, and I had to go to Walmart to buy a tape player just to listen to it. Unfortunately, I don't have any other information about the tape other than what is written on the card sleeve. The track names were written as well as the album title, Everyday Chemistry. Everything else about it is as mysterious to you as it is to me. It also wasn't like I could have asked the guy anything about it, especially after taking it from him. Alright, so that was the end of the story. If you guys want to listen to the tape, it's available on the website, thebeatlesneverbroakeup.com. The whole album is there, and some of the songs are just, they're so surreal to listen to. Like, I had the same, reaction to this music that guy probably had. It is insane. It sounds like what the Beatles would have sounded like, I think, in, the 80s, late 70s, 80s. It's just crazy. But if you guys like that story, please like this video. Comment below if you have any more stories like this. I just love reading off these stories, so if you have anything, please share. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!